Does it feel like every part of your life is divided? Every scenario, every environment, your church, your school, your work, your friends, left, right, conservative, liberal, religious, secular. It seems you always have to take a side. This is a conversation between a progressive Christian and a conservative atheist who happen to be great friends. Welcome to Living on Common Ground.
Do you think if we met today, we would still be friends?
I don't know, but we're friends now.
A mob is no less a mob because they're with you.
Man, so what? We won a few games. And y'all fools think that's something? Man, that ain't nothing, y'all. And you know what else? We ain't nothing either. Yeah, we came together in camp. Cool. But then we're right back here and the world tells us that they don't want us to be together. We fall apart like we ain't a damn bit of nothing, man.
Well, good. All right. So, Steinbeck.
What? Okay, that's quite the transition.
Sorry. No, I do want to know how you're doing. How are you doing? Because I feel like I haven't really hung out with you a lot lately.
I'm good. I'm busy. It's been busy, but all good busy.
Yeah.
It's been work and just a lot of travel for work, but
Sure.
no, but it's been good. Yeah, we've been. But I'm just super happy about the sun being out again.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I'm getting ready to head to Cincinnati on Thursday. Cool. Yeah, I got that speaking engagement at University of Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And then
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yep. And then we have postponed the live recording for Friday. So when we reschedule that, we'll let everybody know.
Yep.
And then we have.
And we'll try to give plenty of notice.
Yeah. Yeah. And you and I probably need to do a better job of telling our friends to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
we'll get it rescheduled.
Yeah, we will. And then next week is Holy Week. So there's a lot going on. We've got the normal Bible studies that I do on Wednesday. Then Thursday night, we're doing that Seder meal. Friday night will be the Tenebrae service, and then we have Easter. And then the day after Easter, I head to the woods for 2 weeks. So
you must be very excited about that.
I am. I spent.
Is that
Monday
how long
evening.
You went the last time?
Yeah.
2 weeks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I ended up getting done quicker because by the end of it, I'm covering 16 miles a day. You know,
Sure.
in the beginning, I hit 10 miles and I'm exhausted. But but after a while, you build
get
up.
Stronger after a while.
Yeah,
more used to it.
Yeah, so I spent Monday evening plotting my course.
That's fun.
Yeah,
that must be fun.
It was a lot of fun. And then
the last time was what, 4 years ago?
It was in 22,
right?
Yeah,
it was right before we came.
Yeah, yep. So I know that's crazy to think about that. So, all right, now so I've been reading a lot of Steinbeck, right? And
you just told me that you're reading Grapes of Wrath. Are you reading other stuff?
Oh yeah. So, in high school you get assigned Steinbeck, right? And of course I'm many, many years removed from high school. But in high school I wasn't really crazy about reading.
You're more removed than I am.
Yeah, thank you. 10 years, right?
Uh-huh.
And
that's more.
Yeah, sure. By a lot, especially when you're thinking in terms of high school. So I got assigned Grapes of Wrath, and I did the Cliff Notes version just so I could make sure that I didn't fail the exam, But then a couple years ago, I picked up Of Mice and Men, and I read it, and I was like, man, that was really, really good. And so this year I have read Tortilla Flat, I have read
That one I've never read.
Oh, they're short. They're like,
Yeah,
you know,
I know. I got to read that one.
yeah, it's fantastic. It's very humorous. I read The Pearl, which is even shorter.
Mhm.
I read let's see, Cannery Row, which is really good. And then I read let's see, oh, it's his big East of Eden. I was gonna say it's kind of like his epic. I read
Okay.
East of Eden this year, and now I'm about 3/4 of the way through Grapes of Wrath. Finally, instead of just reading the Cliff Notes, and so anyway,
I'm realizing right now that there's
Mhm.
several of his works that I've not read that I need to read.
oh, I've got a
Like I
list
have
of
not read
all of
Cannery
them.
Row, and I
Mhm.
really should. I did. I mean, this is going to sound like someone saying Paris is a beautiful city. I really love Monterey, the Monterey area, and I did an
Yeah,
internship in that area, and so it feels a little bit more close to home. But there's a few of those titles that you mentioned that I haven't read,
yeah.
but
I've
I like him
got
a lot.
yeah. I love Steinbeck, and then on my I'm hoping to get read next. So I want to finish Grapes of Wrath this week, and then next week I want to read. Hold on, I've got it right here. Uh, The Winter of Our Discontent, and which is another Steinbeck. So anyway, um, so I think was it Sunday? I said something, and you were like, you said that Steinbeck was a communist,
Uh,
and my response was, no, he's an American icon, and then I had a lot of fun with the
I don't think those two things are
are
mutually
mutually
exclusive.
exclusive. Sure, okay, well that's good too, but and then I think I enjoyed what I perceived as friendly banter back and forth about that, and it made me laugh, even though you couldn't see me laughing and smiling because it was over the phone and it was over text messages. But I enjoyed it so much that I wanted to talk a little bit about Steinbeck, and I'm going to convince you that he's not a communist. And then,
I know if you look it up, it'll say that he said that he wasn't a communist.
well,
Blah blah blah.
Okay, but then,
I don't
I
find
want to
being
use. Go ahead. No. Go ahead. You don't find being
no,
a communist?
I so especially when you're talking about the early 20th century.
Mhm.
I mean it's not. Chris and I were talking about this. So when let me back up for a second. When Obama was running for president,
Mhm.
and then especially in his first term,
Mhm.
there was a lot of talk about him being a communist, right? Like people would say that. They'd say
Mhm.
Obama's a communist. Um the people in my circles would say that also. And I know it's kind of thrown around like a epithet, right?
Mhm.
Like it's just a pejorative.
Yeah, I've been
But
accused of being a communist.
well, yeah, sure. And to be clear, I think Obama definitely was very much a socialist, but whatever. Anyway, which I don't find a whole lot of difference. But anyway, I know it's thrown around just as like name calling, right? It's just name calling. It can be, but especially when you're talking the early 20th century, it was a legitimate ideology, and there was a lot of people who were communists all the way to and I would say actually it's making a big comeback, has been for the last 15 20 years or so, and especially in the last 10 years, of people who just out and out are very very comfortable calling themselves communists. So I mean it all the way to the where you start to see it It's very subtle. You start to see it being favorably spoken about in popular media.
Mm.
And I'll give you an example. I don't know if you watched the show The Last of Us that was based off the video game.
Yeah.
On HBO. So when the main characters, Joel and the girl that he's protecting, I can't remember her name. When they get to they're traveling and they get to this kind of village place that where he meets up with his brother.
Yep.
He's talking to the leader of this settlement, and she says, like, you know, we do this and then we do this. Here's the rules. This is what we do, and this is what you have to do, and blah blah blah. And he goes, "Oh, so you're like communists?" And his brother goes, "No, we're not communists," because again, he's responding in the way that we recognize as like it's just an epithet. And the leader, she goes, "No, this is a commune. Yes, we're communists." And the point that I'm making is the writers of the show did that on purpose. I guarantee you that they're sympathetic, that they're painting it in, actually, this is what real communism is. Real communism is where everyone's happy with each other. Right.
Sure.
Anyway, my point is just that it's not just a name calling. I think, you know, again, especially, and then we started talking about like, I'd mentioned the Red Scare and
which I want to talk about that too.
Happen that, but anyway, so you give me your argument why he was not a communist.
Okay, so I took it very seriously because well, first of all, I do believe that it's a label that's thrown at people, but I will concede everything you just said about communism, right? So like. The problem
is... It's certainly a label that's thrown at people, just like fascism is a label that gets thrown at people.
Yeah. And it's any time that you... okay, so as I think about the Red Scare in particular, and I think about like during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl and all of that kind of stuff, it is... And again, reading Grapes of Wrath, being accused of being a red, right, is a way for those who are experiencing privilege to hold on to their privilege, whether it be economic privilege or anything like that, right? I love that we're doing this by video because everyone can see the smirk on your face that I always have to freaking look at when we're talking across the table.
I know I fell a face. All right, go ahead.
It's okay. It's okay. You play poker?
Not well.
Yeah, I don't even try. So, but it is. At least that's the way it appears to be, right? Like, and I'm going back to the early 20th century when we're accusing people of being communists. And in the Grapes of Wrath, just to keep it contextual, you have these large conglomerates that are buying up farms that are failing because of the Dust Bowl. And then you've got people migrating out to California, which, by the way, that's how I think we originally ended up on this conversation, is because your family, you were the 5th generation from California before you migrated over to Tennessee. And so what would we call a person? Because like in Steinbeck and in that time, the derogatory term was an Okie. Anybody moving from the Midwest over to California, they were called Okies. So what would be a good derogatory term? You did not want to be an Okie. No. What would be a good derogatory term for all of the Californians that are currently fleeing the state?
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm sure there is what's a good, I mean, like, I haven't heard a particular term except like us Californians call ourselves refugees for sure. I think of myself as an expat, but I haven't heard a particular derogatory term. I hear lots of phrases like "Don't California my Tennessee" and you know, just lots of kind of platitudes.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
But I haven't heard a particular term. But I'm open to it.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing, and I know I just jumped topic real quick, and I'll come back around to Grapes of Wrath.
It's our podcast,
right? So, by the way, Madison was talking about our podcast with one of her coworkers in Cincinnati at the prosecutor's office, the county, the district attorney, and he listened to it, and he told her that he did, and he said he found it very boring because he wanted us to fight, and he goes, it just sounds like two people that are trying to get along, and she goes, well, it's called living on common ground, and it's not called two guys fighting. So anyway,
yeah, but he's a prosecutor. He probably likes that. That's what I wanted to do when I went to college, was be a prosecutor. I watched Law and Order, and I would skip the first half of the episode with all the detective work, and I would jump directly to the DA, and I wanted to put all the scumbags behind bars. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was just because you have a tendency to argue against whatever is being presented, and that would be So
I loved debate, but that was what I realized when I was on the debate team, and the research side of it was giving me panic attacks. And I was like, maybe being an attorney isn't the best option for me.
That's so funny. Well, never let facts get in the way of a good opinion.
Sure.
So let's see so what I find very funny, I'm going to go California, migrating away, and then back to Grapes of Wrath for a second.
Yep.
Okay. So I find it very interesting that in our area in Tennessee, that people that have been in Tennessee for a long time are not thrilled to see the Californians moving into the area. But the funny thing to me is that the people that have moved here from California, the reason they're moving to California is because they appear to prefer the culture, the politics, whatever, in this area. And so it's not like they're trying to bring California politics into Tennessee. They're actually trying to escape whatever it is that they're trying to get away from in California. And so the response of people in Tennessee to those that are coming from California, it just baffles me, because you're basically just getting more of your own.
Yeah, but I think it actually, I mean, we don't have to talk about this, but I think it's an interesting microcosm of how culture works anyway. I think it's to be expected that, there's a history podcaster who, he would always say, native's gonna native. That's what natives do. Natives are always on the aggregate, uncomfortable and distrustful of outsiders moving in, and I'm sympathetic to that. I understand it. I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with it. I personally myself want to live in a way that is welcoming, but that's prejudicial. I'm fine, generally speaking, with lots of different types of people. I like it. However, I get it when people have a way of being, right? A culture, a way that we do things, a familiarity, and then that gets shifted. I think there's only a certain degree of change the population can take before it is unreasonable to expect it to not react in some way, and that's really what I see, because it's not rational. Because like you said, the people who are leaving California, like us, were leaving because we did not want the culture of California. We chose Tennessee partly because we wanted the Tennessee culture. Yeah. But having said that, I mean, there's also a whole bunch of other stuff that's built into that, which is like, housing prices changing, cost of living changing, traffic changing, lots of things that change as well. And so I understand that. But that, I think, is relatable to the whole Grapes of Wrath conversation, because that was what the Californians were experiencing with this influx of these people who had, very different mannerisms, very different, they were, by and large, they were very poor, right? So they were, they had a different type of culture, both family and village type culture that than what they were bringing, or than the area that they were coming into. And so, yeah, it's disruptive. It always is. It's always disruptive.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about the movie Gangs of New York.
Yep.
and
Absolutely.
the response of the natives to the Irish that were coming
Yep.
in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Happened
okay.
over and over again to the Irish, the
Yep.
Italians, to the Polish, the
Mhm.
Germans.
Everybody
even,
loves the Dutch, though.
do they? I think
I would.
do they love the Dutch, or did the Dutch control the banking system enough during the early years that they got the
There is
they got
no
it to,
doubt that the Dutch controlled the banking. I mean, it just, yeah. Who was the first country to give the newly formed United States a line of credit?
Yeah.
Okay, so we digress. I have 6 points that I have developed here.
You have 6 points?
Sure,
Is that what you said?
I think so.
That's hilarious. Okay, give them to me.
Okay, so first, I think that it's too easy to just dismiss Steinbeck as a communist. I think that his politics were definitely complicated. I think he's undeniably left-leaning. And if you read his stuff, he's deeply sympathetic to the working class, absolutely. But I think that there's a meaningful difference between social conscience and being a card-carrying communist. So that's the first one.
You want me to respond when you say these, or do you want me to wait?
Yeah, no, we're going to go. I think that I'm going to give you a chance to tear each one apart. Let me just finish this one thought. So his politics are rooted in empathy and humanism, not ideological doctrine. And I think the reason I wrote this one is because this is the first one that I really sort of, I was probably writing about me, to be honest with you, right? Like, because I mentioned I get accused of being a communist, but I don't believe in communism as an ideology, like as a political system. I don't believe it. Like, it just doesn't seem to work. However, I do find that my politics are rooted in empathy and humanism. And then I think that he did, I think, come out and at one point say that he distrusted any system, left or right, that treated people as abstractions rather than human beings. So, all right, that's my first thing. Summary statement: Steinbeck's politics were complicated, not communist.
Okay, so first thing I would say is I never said I was dismissing him because he was a communist. I'm definitely not dismissing him. I wouldn't dismiss anyone simply because they're a communist. I think Marxist theory is a legitimate framework to view the world. I agree with a lot of its axiomatic positions. I just completely disagree with its conclusions. And I think it leads inexorably into a totalitarian state. Now, what I would say is that even though I really want to quibble a little bit with the kind of prejudicial language of politics being rooted in empathy, that sounds like it's the good people.
Well, it is.
Okay. It just sounds, I mean, well, what I would say is that point, I think, when you say that it's not, his politics weren't rooted in a particular ideology, that could be legitimate. I could grant you that point, because real real communism based on theory, it is an abstraction. It is a framework to view history and economies and that kind of thing. And so it does view populations as abstractions. That's I think that's fair, and I think that is actually a fair delineation between especially mid-century, what you might call democratic socialists, and like card-carrying communists.
Yep.
I think that's probably fair. And there's a really, we've talked about this before, but a really distinct example, or really acute example of that during the 60s, when I think they were called the PL, which was a communist group. You could say infiltrated, but really they got themselves elected legitimately into SDS, the Students for Democratic Society, which had always been dominated by people that would have been who would consider themselves to be democratic socialists, actual socialists, but they were more anti-communists than the right was. They were vehemently anti-communist because they saw communists as coming in and ruining the party, right? Because communists didn't want, and this is probably the best argument you have for the idea that Steinbeck wasn't a communist, is that he actually wanted increased, better living conditions for the working class, and card-carrying communists, especially during the early and mid 20th century, they worked against bettering the living conditions of working class, because as the working class gets better working conditions and living conditions and standards of living, the pressure for revolution drops population wide. And so they lose their soldiers that way. Essentially, they need them. They need the working class to be oppressed and desperate, because desperate people make good soldiers, and in civil wars. But okay, so I guess I give it to you on one side, but I and maybe I was being hyperbolic. But what I will say is that he was on the spectrum of a lot of people who were absolutely communists in all levels of our government, which is what caused the Red Scare. The Red Scare didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't invented out of whole cloth by McCarthy to just smear political opponents. It came from legitimate concerns and real infiltration of communists into our government. And I think that we had it was during a time period where it was we all grew up and came of age. Even you, I would say, came of age.
Even old me.
Well, I mean, I definitely came of age post Reagan, right? When the society our American society gave up on the idea of things like eliminating poverty, conquering death. We gave up on that at the end of the 60s into the early 70s during that hangover time. And then in the late 70s was when everything just is kind of this lull of what the hell do we do now? And then the 80s was this time of with Reagan saying the worst thing that the government could say is I'm the government, I'm here to help kind of thing, right? Where the whole idea was no, the government's not going to do anything. We're stepping back, and it's going to be all, we grew up in that, came of age in that world where the idea of calling somebody a communist, it really was just you're just calling names at that point, right? There's no communists really. I mean, maybe one or two, but there's no communists, and definitely no out and out communists. But if you go back to 1925, I mean, it was a legitimate ideology, just fascism was a legitimate ideology. They were both legitimate ideologies and ways of looking at the world and how should we structure it and blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying I agree with either one of them. I'm just saying right. There were definitely people all through our government that had that ideology. Anyway. All right. So sorry, I kind of rambled.
That's good. In the spirit of concession, I also agree with you that communism as a political ideology always will result in totalitarianism. At least that's what I took away from when I read the Communist Manifesto. And the other thing too is that communism. So if the knock on capitalism is that you need to have a sort of the lower working class, the people that you can kind of control with wages and stuff like that, then that can also be leveled against communism. Is that you have to have that subservient class for your purpose of revolution and things like that. So
Yeah.
they're just, it's one of those where they're pointing fingers at each other, but they're both just using almost the same people. Okay, so you actually raised my third point, so I'll go down to my third point, which is that this idea of Steinbeck actually wanted to raise up the living for the working class, the quality
The
of
living
life.
standards,
Yeah,
quality of life
yeah,
for people.
yeah. And so what I wrote was his work actually defies the communist label. The Grapes of Wrath is often cited as communist propaganda, and as you read it, you can see like it's there's a lot of discussion about being called a red throughout that. But I would argue that if you read closely, it's actually deeply American. Because the Jodes, the main family in the story, they're not looking for a revolution, even though there's like suggestions a couple times about how we could do this. They're actually just looking for work and dignity and what we often call the American dream. And so the book is a critique, in my opinion, on how capitalism was failing its own ideals, not a call to overthrow it. And I think that that's a very different thing than a call for communism. So, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I will say that. Oh shoot! It went right out of my head. Again, in the same way that I would say I don't dismiss somebody because they're a communist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that saying something is communist propaganda means that it's not American. I think that communist propaganda is wrapped up in late 19th century, early 20th century American ideology. I think that this part of it. I think that here's a good example, or another example. We took our kids a couple years ago to DC and did the whole touristy thing. And we did something, and I didn't get all of this done because I didn't plan ahead enough, but it's something that I got like half of it done that I would recommend for anybody going to DC. If you go to DC, like a month and a half before you go, call your congressperson, and ask them for a tour. So you can go and you can get like the group tours that they do for free or whatever, through the Capitol building and the White House and all of that. And that's fine. But if you call your congressperson, they have somebody on staff. They'll arrange a private tour. They'll have one of their staff people, an intern, come down and give you a tour, and it'll be private and it's great. And, we're not like special people. It's not like I'm not a donor or anything, You
are a special person.
I said, but we got, our family got a private tour and it was fantastic. So I'd recommend anybody do that. If you're going to DC, get that private tour. But while we were doing the tour, one of the parts of the tour of the Capitol building is the rotunda. I think I'm getting this right. And that has all of the statues. Every state has a statue of a person that's supposed to represent who we are as a state is in there. And it has their name and it has what, I don't know if it has like a little thing about like what they did, but it has the state and it has their name. And it's really interesting actually because you would think, it's not like we don't know how many states we have, right? It's been the same number since the 50s. And so you would think that all of these statues would be put in this room in a really organized way, but it's really not. They kind of looks like a room in your house where you just started shoving furniture and it's all kind of like put in different ways, But I noticed as I was looking at all the statues, the statue that they have for Louisiana that Louisiana has that they sent is Huey P. Long. And for whoever doesn't know this, Huey P. Long was a communist who was FDR at one point called him the most dangerous man in America. He set up a lot of people thought that he was going to be president. He set up this fiefdom where he it was this patronage system where he was in complete control of the state, but it was for all of his rhetoric was leftist rhetoric, right? It was all for the poor, but it was like extreme power concentrated. I could not believe that is who they picked to have, but as their statue, but they did. That is who the people of Louisiana at some point felt that they wanted to represent their state. And so my point is, I think that these ideologies, if we can get our minds into the experience of somebody living in 1932 or 1938 or whatever, it is part of the American story in my opinion. So I guess that's my only quibble, is that I don't think that there's a I don't think that there's a contrast, between communist and what you said, kind of deeply American. To me, I feel like that is part of the American story. Is all of this that, and I think that if the United States exists 250 years from now, I think we'll have more eras where that'll be part of our American story.
I think if we're here 250 years from now, we're going to have ideologies we're not even aware of.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing to me. As we're going through this process, this conversation. So, okay, here's my observation, is that on Sunday, I reached out to you because I wanted to know about your family's history and how much you actually knew about it, because I was curious specifically about the arrival of the Okies during the Dust Bowl era.
Yeah.
Right. And all of that. And I knew that your family would be there during that. And I didn't know how much you knew. All right. So that sort of began the conversation. Then I mentioned Steinbeck, and then I was reading Grapes of Wrath. And then you say, well, Steinbeck was a communist. And then I respond. I have a response to the statement. So I have a response to the statement, Steinbeck is a communist. Now, here's the observation I'm beginning to make. And I think it's really important for the overall theme of this podcast, and the overall theme of like why I'm going to Cincinnati this week to go talk on campus, and like why, like everything that we've been writing and talking and all this kind of stuff. I heard you say something that you didn't say. Right?
Just
okay. So I carry.
On Sunday.
On Sunday, I heard you say something that you didn't actually say. I heard you make a negative, if you want to use a pejorative, whatever, comment about Steinbeck. And when I heard that, the reason I heard that was because of I have been accused, and the way that those conversations took shape when I was accused of being a communist. And so when I heard you say Steinbeck is a communist, I took those previous conversations where I had been accused of being a communist in a way that was definitely an attack. There's no doubt about it. They were yelling and screaming at me at the time, right? It wasn't like, hey, you might be a communist. It was like, you're a effing communist, right? And so when you said that, I reheard that, right?
Sure.
And so then I go back and I spend at least an hour, if not more, putting together this. Okay. And then we start
this
having,
is why I like you, Jeff. You are
Right.
I think you and I would have been good debate partners because you are such a first aft. You're a first affirmative. You go create a case. It's great. All right,
absolutely. So I do all of this. I spend all of this energy, and then we have a conversation, and you have an opportunity to clarify your statement. And I'm like, we're not really that far apart. All right.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of what the whole premise is that we hear each other say things, not just you and I, but in our society, we hear each other say things, and we carry so much in our intellectual toolbox, like I talk about, right? That we're assuming that we know what the other person's already saying without taking the time to actually listen to what they're saying. And so now, like when I hear you say that Steinbeck is a communist, I'm not having the emotional reaction that I had the first time you said it. Right. And now, just to be completely, I had an emotional reaction, but because it's you and you're a great friend of mine, I wasn't angry. Right.
I could get through it.
Yeah,
you could get through it and still be here.
And I could laugh it off. And even like when you said, okay, just for full disclosure, like yesterday you texted me, you're like, hey man, I hope you know I was just joking. That was my assumption from the very beginning, is that you were just trying, you're coming at it from hyperbole. Yes, I do believe that you meant what you said, but I do believe that the way you said it and everything like that was just to try to rile me up. Right.
And I was being flippant on purpose. I also was being flippant.
Absolutely. Right. But I gave you that benefit of the doubt because you're my friend. If I didn't know you and you had said that to me, it would have landed completely different.
Yep.
Right. And I still would have gone through this whole process and been like, oh, yeah, well, let me show you 6 reasons why you're wrong, which I did for you, too. Right. As my friend. But the only reason I did it is because I knew that you and I were going to talk about it today. So I think this is really a really good exercise for anybody that's listening to sort of see how that actually plays out in real life. Somebody might say something to you and you initially have this emotional reaction to it. And I think that there's stoicism in that too, right? Like that's the discipline of, I forget which one. Anyway, but that you experience the emotion, but you can't respond emotionally. You got to sort of process it. And then you've got to get engaged in critical thinking, and you've got to figure out how can I have this conversation using nonviolent communication and all of the things. So anyway, all tools. So
I had this reaction at the end of our last conversation with the gentleman that we interviewed.
Yeah, Steve.
I actually had that with Steve, who just let me preface by saying, loved the conversation, liked him a lot, good guy. Well, I don't know if he's a good guy. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's a terrible person.
He seems to be.
But
I
liked
his book, by the way. Yeah,
I liked him. I liked the conversation. But I had this experience, and I didn't bring it up at the time because it was right at the end. I didn't want to, derail end it on whatever. But the comment that he made right at the end about, we hear all the time now. Okay, let me start over because I'm doing the thing where you change the voice and, whatever. You hear all the time now about how empathy is bad. And I'm saying empathy is good, right? That's basically what you're saying. And I had this because I heard that and I was like, oh, I know what you're referring to. I know what you're referencing. And I don't think that's fair at all. And I wanted to argue, right? And it seems to me, and I've had arguments in my mind since then a couple of times where, of course, I won and he was like chagrined, and it's just so dumb. And but it seems to me like it's the exact same thing as what you're talking about here, except you and I, like when I said he's a communist, what went through your mind was something like, oh, I know what you're referencing. I know what you're doing. Because we're friends, like you said, you kind of had the emotional wherewithal to like stop, and also take it in a more favorable kind of perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assume better intent or whatever, just so you could get through it and then have this conversation. So I think that's I think that's really good, and it is a really good example of what you have been trying to talk about with this project you've been working on. So I think it's good. It's very good.
That all being said, I did put work into this, so I'm going to give you the rest of them. All right?
Yeah, go for it. And
Real
I'm not
quick.
going to respond because we're coming to the end, so I'm not going to respond.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, again, was an assumption on my part that when I heard you say that he was a communist, I thought what you were doing was you were referencing the League of American Writers. Because the League of American Writers were an organization that included many writers who were simply they're progressive or anti-fascist, but it did get the label of being a communist organization. However, I wrote that Steinbeck's association with it doesn't make him a communist any more than signing a petition against poverty makes someone a Marxist. And then I put that it's guilty by association was exactly the kind of thinking, and this is where I took a shot, that fueled McCarthyism. So I put that in there. And then I also wrote that the FBI agreed that he was not a communist because they actually investigated him. And the funny thing is, funny, like tongue-in-cheek funny, not like haha, is that J. Edgar Hoover, he hated him. He didn't actually, he was very public about how much he disliked Steinbeck and that he multiple times pushed for investigations, but every time he pushed for investigation, it came up short. Okay, so that was number 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 5 that I came up with was he was fiercely, actually, I would argue he's fiercely pro-American. Through our conversation, we've established that one does not exclude the other. From your perspective, this was me writing from what I heard, not what you said, which is, I think, an excellent thing. But I did put that during World War II, Steinbeck worked as a war correspondent and wrote bombs away to support the U.S. American Air Force. The U.S. Army Air Force. And then later during the Vietnam era, he supported the war effort, which actually drew criticism from the left. And so he, I wrote that. He's very fiercely pro-American. I wrote that, again, this was because I claimed, thinking I was claiming something that stood in contrast to what you were claiming, again, right, which we've established isn't the case. But I wrote that he's an undeniable American icon. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1962, and the Nobel Committee specifically cited his realistic and imaginative writing, combining sympathetic humor and keen social perception. And then I just wrote down 3 things that I just read like recently, well, going back to last year, but Of Mice and Men, East of Eden, and Cannery Row. And these are cornerstones of the American literary canon. His work is taught in virtually every American high school for a reason. That being said, that his works are also now finding themselves on the list of banned books, but not for the reasons that you and I are discussing. They seem to be being put on banned books because of his cultural representation, which was very accurate at his time, that now we find highly offensive. And then I ended with this because I thought this was a slam dunk. I want to read you a quote. And I want you to tell me if it's a communist quote, okay? You may even recognize the quote. All right, it's kind of long, so just give me a second. It is not needed nor fitting here that a general argument should be made in favor of popular institutions, but there is one point with its connections, not so hackneyed as most others, to which I ask a brief attention. It is the effect to place capital on an equal footing with, if not above, labor in the structure of government. It is assumed that labor is available only in connection with capital, that nobody labors unless someone else, owning capital, somehow by the use of it induces him to labor. This assumed, it is next considered whether it is best that capital shall hire laborers, and thus induce them to work by their own consent, or buy them, and drive them to it without their consent. Having proceeded thus far, it is naturally concluded that all laborers are either hired laborers or what we call slaves, and further, it is assumed that whoever is once a hired laborer is fixed in that condition for life. Now, there is no such relation between capital and labor as assumed, nor is there any such thing as a free man being fixed for life in the condition of a hired laborer. Both these assumptions are false, and all inferences from them are groundless. Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is a superior of capital and deserves much the higher consideration. Capital has its rights, which are as worthy of protection as any other rights. All right. Is that a communist statement?
You asking me who said that?
Do you know who said it?
Sounds a lot like Hitler.
Interesting. That's very interesting. That would be your assumption. Okay, so then you're saying it sounds more fascist. Abraham Lincoln.
Well, the that is interesting. I mean, the arguments, the foundational arguments underlying fascism and underlying communism. Well, what I should say is underlying National Socialism, which was fascist, which ended up being fascist, and actual socialism. A lot of the underlying arguments sound very, very, very similar. They have a lot of the same axiomatic principles, but yeah, I mean that's interesting that's Lincoln. What was that in a one of the Douglas debates?
He was.
Do you know?
No, he was actually had already been elected. I think it was 1961, and he was addressing Congress. So, yeah, I found that interesting because then I wrote this because this was my slam dunk for you. All right, as I was preparing to knock you down. Well, knock down what I heard you say, which is what is so hilarious to me, the effort that I put into this. I put this: caring about poor people doesn't make you a communist. If it did, we'd have to call Abraham Lincoln a communist for what he said about labor and capital. So, there you go. Aren't you impressed with all the work I did? That's ultimately what I was trying to do, is just impress you.
I am impressed, and like I said, I think that you would have made a really good first affirmative.
Yeah.
On a debate team, you would have presented the case well, and then as the first neg came up and tried to destroy it, I would have been your junkyard dog right behind you, making sure that they embarrass themselves.
Yeah.
But no, that's good. I'd like to read that speech by Lincoln. I mean, here's the thing. This is what I actually think. Myths are good. They're important. They're fundamental, and they're like gravity. They just are. They always will be. For a culture to exist, our myths tell us who we are. And it doesn't mean that they're fake, but it also doesn't mean that they are some sort of, Victorian era style historiography, historically accurate kind of thing, right? So Lincoln's a mythological figure. You don't get to say that Lincoln was fundamentally un-American, right? Whatever that means. You don't get to say it. And you don't get to say that he was wrong in some way. And you don't get unless it's something that unless it has to do with a principle that we've decided in our modern culture is acceptable. So you can now say, well, Abraham Lincoln was kind of racist, actually. You can say that because we've all agreed racism is the fundamental evil. That's the number one evil that you can't be. Right, ever. And so, which is a mythological position as well, right? And communism. Well, let's see. Okay. Let me just finish my thought real quick. Fascism is a mythological evil. It's part of our mythos. We defeated it. And they're evil. And you can know that fascism is evil and what I consider like a boogeyman, because it has, in every description of it or study of it, it has to take on all negative characteristics, even if those negative characteristics would be conflicting. Right? It has to be stupid and so diabolically dangerous that it might take over at any time. Right? These types of things. Right? But that's okay, because we are trying as a culture to tell ourselves we are this and we're not that. Right? And so but this is just my personality as a 5. I have my own mythoses, right? And so I think it's not unfair for you to have responded the way you did, because I was a little flip. Because when I talk about communists, I do get a little strident, right? And I'm quicker to throw that around, right? To throw that label around than I am to throw around the fascist label, right? So I think it's fair. I think your reaction was fair. And also, what I'm trying to flesh out here is that when I actually look at these historical figures and these historical times and stuff, I am personally interested in trying to get my head into who they were, how they were, as much as I can. What was their actual experience like? And I remember telling one of my friends, I have great admiration for communist revolutionaries, some communist revolutionaries. Che, I have great, not reverence, but there's aspects of that personality that gives itself wholly over to a cause. Man, I get it. It kind of fires me up, like we were talking about Malcolm X the other day.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Like, to me, Dr. King was someone who is like, I mean, I know he was a regular guy and had his foibles and negative characteristics also. But like, to me, in terms of the civil rights movement, he's like this, he's on a pedestal. He's kind of like a shining star, and it's kind of inspirational, right? Malcolm X, man, he gets me fired up. I like it. I get it. Like, let's go fight. I get it. I'm tired of seeing our grandmas and grandpas getting beat down and not doing anything. If they won't do anything, we will, that kind of thing. I get that. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, when I look through these things, I'm kind of of two minds. I can say, this person, this person was super left leaning. They were a leftist. They were associated with communist, whatever, and not think, well, that makes them un-American. Right. Even though it's not the American mythos that I want to subscribe to. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Anyway.
So we always end with what was our common ground, but I think today the entire conversation led there.
Yeah, I think this is interesting.
I thought it was a really interesting thing. You mentioned something that I would like to explore a little bit more, and that's racism. Sure. Maybe in a future pod, not today. We're out of time.
Yeah. But
I read a book recently called Caste, Caste, and I find it fascinating, and so maybe we can talk about that. All right?
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Living on Common Ground. Please follow wherever you listen to your podcasts and share it with your friends. You can also find a link to our social in the description. The more people we have living on common ground, the better the world will be.